Welcome to G5 Classified, your one-stop shop for all things Group of 5 college football. Stepping up to the microphone are your hosts, Gabe Kuhn and Kyron Samuels. Now, let's talk some G5 football.
Let's ride. We have episode 6 of the G5 Classified podcast. Gabe Kuhn right here. We have Kyron Samuels with me. But I have to start here. Real quick. Today, and obviously we record on Wednesday, but I know that we release on a Thursday. 55 straight days of football, Kai, at the NFL and the college football level. We're going to have Conference USA act Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're going to have Maction before long. So from today until November 27th, wall-to-wall football, baby. We are in the swing of things. Got to love it.
It is the best time of year for sure, especially somebody like me. Like, I'm itching. If I'm not watching a game that night, I'll probably watch some film or watch interviews or whatever I need to do to get some football in. So this is perfect for me because I need something like this every day. And you don't get this very often. Now, this is relatively a new thing within like the last couple of years where we've had this amount of stretch. So I've been enjoying it for sure.
Yeah, and we're going to have some like midweek games with the Cox, right? Jacksonville State's going to have some midweek games.
Tuesday, Friday this week for us, and then the next couple of weeks will be in the middle of the week.
Hey, what's weather like, by the way, in the 251? How's it going there? The fall weather hit today. Like, that's where you go outside, you just sniff the air, and you're like, this is what I've been waiting for all year.
So this is like the most bipolar weather in the country. Like, one day you'll have a low of like 60, then it'll be 85 during the day, then we got a tornado watch the next day, and it's raining the next day. So I'm telling you, this is one of the more crazy weather environments there is in the country. So it just depends on the day down here for real.
Yeah. Now we have week 6 on the way. We'll go ahead and preview that, but we have week 5 that we have to recap, and we have to start with the game that was Bama and Georgia. Number 2 versus number 4. Number 2 on the road against number 4. And number 4, Bama, pulls it out in the end, 41-34. Now, they started up in that game 28-7, and they were rolling. They were absolutely rolling. But I will give Georgia credit. They had some second half adjustments. They made some things happen in the second half. They crawled all the way back into that game, took the lead 34-33. But then Ryan Williams, 17-year-old, 5-star recruit who reclassified, who knew that reclassifying was the right move for him, he comes through in the most crucial of moments. And we've been talking about him sort of in and out throughout the entire year. But that guy's absolutely unbelievable. But that was one of those games. I was talking to our good friend Colton Denning from Two Stripes CPD. That's one of those games where, if we still had ESPN Classic in the rotation, that thing would probably be a yearly game that they'd show on ESPN Classic because it was that phenomenal.
Yeah, man, it was just kind of starting from the top. It was crazy not seeing Coach Saban lead the team out for a game like that. I know it's been about 9 months. We're kind of past it now. He's on College Game Day, but it's still crazy for me growing up as an Alabama fan and then, being there all those years to see somebody else lead the team out of the tunnel. But the thing is, like, I got confident and I saw the way those guys were excited. It's just a new life.
Oh, looks like we lost.
Like a different team if we're talking about excitement and atmosphere and morale-wise. So it was cool to see that from the jump. And then they played like it with that energy in the first half. They came out and like I said, got off to that 28-0 start. And it wasn't very much fluky about it. I mean, they were getting 3 and outs or getting pressure on the quarterback, creating turnovers. And then they also were moving the ball offensively. And it wasn't just these explosive big plays, right? That was the first time all season that Alabama had been pretty methodical and driven the ball down the field and then scored in the red zone. And Georgia was one of the only teams, the only team in the country coming into that game who hadn't given up an offensive touchdown. And then they gave up 4 touchdowns on the first 4 possessions of the game. And that was the first time in the Kirby Smart era that they had given up 4 touchdowns on 4 consecutive possessions. They had given up 3 before, but never 4 in a row. So unprecedented start. And like you said, Georgia came back in that second half. Shout out to Schumann and all those guys on the defensive staff. They went to more 3 down front, put extra body. They were having 2 spots on Milroe, making him stay in front of them. And I thought Milroe did a fantastic job of still going through his reads and getting the ball where it should go. There were just, some unfortunate situations for Alabama where, hey, you got to drop on 3rd down by Kendrick Law because, it's a tough catch in between 2 defenders, but he makes that catch, get a first down, clock is moving, drive extended. Just one of those conversions for Alabama. the game would have been different. And then conversely, on the other side, Georgia, they only got, I believe, 3 third downs the entire night, but they got 7 fourth down conversions. And that's just a product of the game, the way the game went. I mean,
right.
Second half, you have to go forward on fourth down the entire second half of that game. And they made just enough plays. They got some good calls to help extend drives as well. And then we got an all-time classic in there.
Right. Now, I think it ended up being a 5 for 5 on fourth down, five fourth down conversions, but they were 5 for 5. It is kind of funny. Like, I think people discount the 3 down versus 4 down game. When you're playing from behind, you kind of have a little bit of an edge over the team you're playing that you're trying to come from behind on, because you're playing with 4 downs instead of 3. Like, it changes the way the game is played, how you get to play defense on third down, for example. Most of the time, if it's a close game, you could pin your ears back, bring some blitzes, try to get into Carson Beck's face in those situations. You have to play it a little bit more conservatively, and then you have to play a conservative fourth down to try to keep things in front of you and limit them from going and converting those fourth downs. So it just changes the game. But I will say this, a couple of takeaways I have for Alabama. Their secondary is a big play secondary. They're not necessarily going to stick to you consistently. Now, I will give Mike Bobo credit and that Georgia offense credit. In the second half, they were scheming guys open consistently, did a really good job with that. And Carson Beck was putting the ball on the money. Now, the first half, he kind of threw up on himself. Let's be honest about it. But they have a big play secondary where they got 3 picks. I was impressed with that. Domani Jackson sort of letting his presence be felt in that game. But their front 7, brother, I'm just going to say it, I think they're unfuckwittable. Like, I just don't really see any team in the country really pressing them as far as running the ball consistently. That Georgia team couldn't run the ball for shit. 26 carries for 80 yards, and obviously they had the 2 touchdowns, but whatever, 26 rushes for 80 yards. It's impressive. You have Tim Keenan and Jaheim Otis and Quay Russaw and all these guys up front. Yeah, you can get after the passer a little bit too, but they are so damn stout. And I have to give a lot of credit. Deontay Lawson is a hell of a linebacker, man. And I feel like he's one of the more underrated guys in the SEC at that sort of inside linebacker position. Yeah,
and I'm glad you brought that up, because Georgia has only run for 158 yards the last 2 meetings combined, the 22-23 SEC championship game and then Saturday night. And I saw somebody talking about, well, it was kind of a byproduct of the way the game went. I'm like, well, if you watch the game, they ran a lot more in the second half. I thought they were conceding too much time when they were running in the second half. And they only had 6 less rushing attempts than Alabama, which is kind of like plays to both the coach staff. Maybe Georgia ran a little bit too much. Maybe Alabama didn't run quite enough. I thought they didn't, take advantage of the inside runs when you had a little bit lighter boxes and only 3 down linemen. But incredible game, and then the finish is just amazing, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the most exciting and enthralling finishes I've ever seen. And it's just, you didn't know what to expect, right? You're like, there's no way Georgia's actually going to do this. And then they do it. They go ahead, they take the lead, and then the first play, Alabama doesn't need a touchdown in that situation. They need a 2-minute drive, get into field goal range, at worst, get into field goal range, trust the Luke Rosa award kicker that you just got from Miami of Ohio, and put him in a situation where he can win the game. And DeBoer's like, F that. He comes out, guns a-blazing. They score on the first play of that next drive. And then a lot of people are saying that, hey, they let too much time left. And that almost ended up proving to be true. They almost left too much time. And so you see the kids, A.B. and Brown, make a play. And I do want to highlight this, because too many people are giving Carson Beck flat for that last throw. I know that it wasn't a perfect throw, and I'm not claiming it to be a perfect throw, but that's how they got back in the game in the second half. He was throwing up those balls, and those guys were making plays. So, maybe they went back to the well one too many times, and the kid figured it out. But if Kobe Young goes up and high points that ball, he probably scores a touchdown. He drifts a little bit. He's looking back, and he drifts a little bit, and that's just enough for the kid to go make a play. So I don't want to give Beck too much free pass, because you could make a quote-unquote perfect throw and kind of eliminate that. But that's exactly what they have been doing the entire second half.
Yeah, and I will say, though, the quarterback battle went exactly how we sort of predicted last week on this show, where Jalen Milroe's unflappable, man. I don't give a damn. Like, the absolute freaking hanging nuts you have to throw that ball to Ryan Williams in that situation on first down. I don't think people understand that.
Yeah.
To throw just a go ball down the sideline to a 17-year-old wide receiver in a one-on-one situation with a Georgia cornerback when you're down by 1 with 2 minutes to go.
Yep.
It's just like, you have to have balls, cojones, to throw that ball. And he did it all night. He didn't give a damn. He was going to put the ball where he needed to put the ball. He looks comfortable as hell. And, he should be in the top 3 for Heisman. And we'll talk about more Heisman candidates here in a second. He's really the one quarterback I look at, and you can put Cam Ward maybe in that conversation as well. But he's the one quarterback I look at that has consistently played at the highest of levels, tried to keep the ball out of harm's way. And he has 18 touchdowns, 1 interception to this point in the season. 18 total touchdowns, 1 interception. The guy's impressive as hell. He has finally put himself in that conversation for, NFL draft. I mean, I heard Mel Kiper Jr. sort of talk about it. He said he is going to vie for that number 1 spot. I still don't know if he's the most natural thrower of the football. That concerns me. And I think if he goes into the NFL, you're going to have to find an OC and a head coach that's willing to morph the way they play, or at least find a guy like Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels. You got to find somebody who can fit the style that Jalen Milroe brings to the table. But then on the other side, Carson Beck, who was almost unanimously the number 1 quarterback for the NFL draft in 2025. I think I got proved right on this. I think he responded very well in the second half. Yeah. After he got some time to think about it and, understand what was expected of him and the way he was being played in the first half. But you can't make that many mistakes in the first half of a ball game and expect to go win it. Now, he still had a chance to win it. I understand that, but he did not come out ready to play. And that, to me, is a big, big knock against you when you're talking about a guy in a big game like that with all that NFL talent. He just didn't seem quite ready for that moment. And that's got to be a frustrating reality for, people that thought that Carson Beck was going to be at the top and be, a number 1 overall pick to whoever needs a quarterback needy team at the top of the draft.
Yeah. Going back to Milroe for just 1 second, I think that's a beautiful synopsis of the game for him because, the whole thing about Jalen Milroe, the whole thing that's been encompassing him is that he can't throw the football. He can't do this, can't do that. Bill O'Brien has been outspoken about it. It turns out he was the coach that was basically telling him that he can't be a successful quarterback. And to see Milroe grow through these last couple of games, he has 1 interception in his last 8 starts, and that was Saturday night. And that interception bounced off of C.J. Diprie's hands. It should have been a caught ball 100%. So even in that turnover, he's been, extremely accurate. And he's just believing, man. I think that says a lot about Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan and the offensive staff that they had enough faith to say, hey, we're not only going to throw the ball to a 17-year-old, we're going to trust our quarterback in this situation down a point in what could be the biggest the biggest comeback in SEC football history on one of the biggest stages that college football has seen in a long time in the regular season. And it just says a lot about how much they trust Jalen Milroe. So to go from what he started with, getting benched last year against South Florida, just before he even took the field, how much doubt he went through, to now, it's just a cool thing to see. And then Carson Beck, I'm glad you brought that up too, because I was definitely one of the people that had Carson Beck as quarterback 1 coming into the season. And I wasn't tied to that opinion. I said, I think he's quarterback 1 as of today. I haven't seen anybody else that has been as consistent as he was. Even in the big games, he was extremely consistent last year for Georgia. But he played just well enough in the second half for the truthers to be like, he's still the guy. And then he played poorly enough in the first half for everybody to be like, look, I told you he's not the guy. I think this is probably the best situation to be in for Beck. If you play too well, you have just a good enough game, but you don't light it up against Alabama. Everybody says, oh, you're still not the guy, system guy, whatever. You look like crap, and then you just get blown out. People kind of have you in the, all right, he's not the guy category. He has a perfect opportunity for the rest of the 2024 regular season to prove to people why he is or isn't that guy.
Sure.
And I think he's going to be one of the people that rise to the occasion. He did it last year against Alabama. He didn't have the best first half against Alabama. He found his win in late in that third quarter and had a really good fourth quarter SEC championship game. He needs to trust himself. I think that's the biggest thing. You can make those throws. You can process. You can be a guy that uses his legs more. He's more athletic than he probably realizes. He needs to use his legs more. Against some of those blitzes that he saw, if he just ducks it and run, he can evade a couple of those and just beat the guy and have a free runner now. So I think that everything should slow down. He was spooked, man. That pressure was getting after him. Kane Womack's dialing it up. He's sending 8-man pressures backed up on the 4-yard line, up 21 points. That could probably be really jarring to see. But I'm glad that he got that experience because that's the only way you're ever going to learn. You're not going to learn when you're blowing out UT Martin or whoever it is by 45 points and you look really good. So I think Beck has the perfect opportunity. And the biggest thing I'm taking away from this game is that we'll talk about it here in a little while for my winners of the week, but the amount of first and second year players on the field for Alabama was the scariest part about that game. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, they have a little more runway, is what you're saying. I completely understand. Now, I really my synopsis of those two quarterbacks. I saw one quarterback who will ultimately make the plays, put the game on his back to go win the game. I feel like Carson Beck is in that situation where he's going to ask his players, ask his teammates to go help him in those moments. Jalen Milroe, it seems like, obviously Ryan Williams helped him a lot in that unbelievable play on that 75-yard touchdown pass. But, Jalen Milroe is the type of guy that will go win you the game in crunch time, and you feel very confident in the way he carries himself in those moments. Carson Beck, I don't quite feel the same. I know that's sort of in the eye of the
all comparisons are extremely accurate in my opinion.
Yes, yeah, but I think that's in the eye of the beholder. So if you disagree with me, you disagree with me. I don't give a damn. But the last couple stats I want to bring up: Kalen DeBoer now improves to 6-0 versus Dan Lanning, Steve Sarkisian, and Kirby Smart. And then Kirby Smart, at this point, 1-6 versus Bama. He's 45-3, dating back 48 games. Those 3 losses, all to Alabama. Doesn't matter who's coaching; they're all to Alabama. 2 to Nick Saban, and then 1, of course, to Kalen DeBoer. Now let's get to the other SEC game. I'm just going to put this in your court real quick. Then I'll give you my opinion. Kentucky beats Ole Miss on the road. Goes into Ole Miss. Goes into Vaughn Hemingway. Beats them 20-17.
It feels strange to be in a situation to blame Ole Miss's Ole Miss's offense for a loss as opposed to Ole Miss's defense. I thought the defense played well enough for them to win that ball game. If you're Ole Miss, if you can go into a game and have Kentucky or whoever you play held to 20 points or less, you should feel damn good about your chances to win every single one of those ball games. You have one of the more explosive offenses in the country. You have one of the best quarterbacks. You have arguably the foremost mind as your offensive coordinator / play caller with Lane Kiffin. Really, we know he's calling the plays here. We know he's running the show. There should never be a game, especially against a team. And we know Kentucky is a very solid team, top to bottom. They just took, Georgia to the brink. They always play some games tough like this. They'll beat a team they're not supposed to every year. There's no way this is supposed to be the year and you put on that performance. This is the year, man. You don't have to play Alabama. You have a 12-team playoff. There is no divisions in the SEC anymore. So you top 2 teams are going to make it to Atlanta. This is supposed to be the runway for them. And this kind of, I guess this is, I'll say a little bit because they're my biggest loser of the week. I'll just go ahead and spoil it right now.
But here's what it reminded me of. We both watch UFC, right?
Yeah.
Israel Adesanya had won a fight, won a title fight. It was a title defense, and then he fights Sean Strickland, right? You remember that fight? And everybody's like, okay, Israel Adesanya is going to whoop this guy's ass. Like, he's just going to outstrike him, outclass him. He can fight from the outside. We know that Sean Strickland's a pressure fighter, but at the same time, Israel, he's just he's on his P's and Q's. He understands. He's got good fundamentals. Well, he'll get out with a win. It may not be the prettiest thing in the world. Well, if you watch that fight, Sean Strickland walked this dude down for 5 rounds and probably won all 5 rounds. Yeah. That's what it felt like for me to Kentucky with Ole Miss.
Yep.
Kentucky just made that game as grimy as humanly possible. They did not let Ole Miss run the ball. I thought Ole Miss tried to get a little too cute in their run game because Jackson Dart is a really good runner of the football. They tried to get him some option looks, some throw-out looks off the option. It just got a little bit too cute for my liking. He wasn't able to run the ball, so they weren't able to execute their run game how they're normally used to. And I think that comes down to the fact that Kentucky just always has a good front 7. And there's a couple of guys he wins the name game for sure. The guy from Kentucky, I'm forgetting it right now, but Deion Walker's one guy from Kentucky, 6'6", 345 pounds. They couldn't block him all day. He had a half sack and 4 tackles. And then Octavius Oxendine, that's his name. What a damn name, by the way. Octavius Oxendine. He's their other sort of smaller defensive tackle. He got after them, man. He got after that interior offensive line, and they didn't have much of a chance. He had 2 sacks, a couple of tackles for loss, I think 4 tackles of his own. So I just saw some weak points from that Ole Miss team that we have not been able to see because they haven't played a lot of competition. As soon as they got into a competition with somebody in the trenches that has a little bit of juice that can make it grimy, it just got uncomfortable for them. And I think what we saw, one thing, their interior offensive line, definitely shaky. They're going to have to find a way to protect them the rest of the way. That's going to be on Lane Kiffin and Charlie Weiss Jr. to figure out a way to make that happen. The other thing, they have talented pass catchers. Like, they have Juice Wells. They have Caden Priestcorn. Like, they have guys, but they're playing buddy ball with Trey Harris.
Yeah.
You're going to have to open it up a little bit more and find other guys in your pass game if you want to be as successful as humanly possible. If you want to maximize Jackson Dart, maximize this passing offense, start to spread the ball around a little bit more. There's no reason Trey Harris should have 800 yards at this point through however many games it's been. You should be able to spread it out a lot more. You have more than enough talent to be Jordan Watkins is a solid guy. Juice Wells, solid guy. Caden Priestman. Start throwing it to those guys a little bit more, trying to get them a part of the offense.
Yeah, and last thing about this for me before I get to them in the next segment, you can't lose the time of possession battle 40-20 on your home field and not be efficient when you have your opportunities. I mean, they still outgained Kentucky, but that goes to show you that there's missed opportunities there. You can't outgain them.
And the third down efficiency, 1 for 10, can't happen.
Can't happen. So on the money downs, they weren't good. They weren't efficient with their chances. They had some really crucial penalties too. They had more than double the penalties of Kentucky. It just seems like, and I don't want to do this to Lane Kiffin because he's my guy, because I don't think they're an undisciplined football team. It just seems like they weren't quite on the right page, and you have to attribute that to coaching, in my opinion. When you see teams in sync, when you see teams going out there and dominating the game, controlling the time of possession, getting off the field on third down, to me, it's not a skill problem because we know that Ole Miss is as talented as anybody, especially at the skill positions, probably in all of college football. To me, that was a coaching problem, and you have to get that fixed. You have to take accountability for that. And they're probably thinking they're lucky stars as a 12-seed playoff because, they're still going to play Georgia, probably lose that game. But 10-2 still probably finds Ole Miss in the playoffs. So every goal that they have is still right in front of them. And
I mean, in the end of the day, in the end of the day, when I think about that Ole Miss team and that loss against Kentucky, I thought they played under their capability.
Right.
Simple as that. And they even had a chance at the end. They had a missed field goal. They had a fumble they could have recovered that they didn't and let Kentucky hop on it in the end zone. There's just a couple of things that swung the opposite direction. But I felt like that was a team against Kentucky that they probably should win by a touchdown or more. I still feel like if they played that game again on a neutral site field or even in Kentucky, I would still like Ole Miss in that game. I just thought they did not accept the challenge of how grimy and nasty that Kentucky was going to try to make that game. Hold on to the ball, grind it down to a hold. Don't let your offense on the field. They weren't ready for that type of battle. They weren't ready for that. And it really, give credit to Kentucky. They played that game exactly how they – like exactly probably how Mark Stoops drew it up. That was probably dead on. Now, people being a little bit too quiet about Colorado. Can you speak to me on that? 4-1, 2-0 in the Big 12, and I don't know if people knew this. I don't know. I didn't know if people were aware. UCF, they were 12.5-point favorites on their home field against Colorado. Colorado wins 48-21. Beat the shit out of them. Wasn't even close.
A lot of that is just like people are afraid to admit they're wrong or too stubborn to admit they're wrong. And I think it's okay, man. Like, a lot of people came out the gate, I think, too early on Colorado last year, kind of like trying to adjust for them not believing in Colorado after that first 3 or 4 game stretch where they looked really good. And then they overcorrected and put Colorado top 25 and had them in all these rankings and saying they're going to do this and that this season. Then they go lay an egg for the rest of the season. And maybe they're not trying to make the same mistake this season, but this ain't the same team, guys. If you're watching this team actually play football, this is the same team. The offensive line still is not fantastic, but if you watch them the last couple of weeks, they're good enough now. They're good enough to give Shador enough time. And when Shador has even a little bit of time, even when he doesn't, he's still able to extend plays. But he's not getting completely battered every week this year. And that's giving them enough chances to be in ball games. And I'm going to stick on offense right now. I think they have the most complete – I'm not saying they have the most talented, and even that's a debate to me, but I think they have the most complete wide receiver room in the country. When you look at what they have, and Travis Hunter, he's a do-it-all receiver. He probably, in my opinion, if he played receiver full-time, he would be wide receiver 1 in this draft. I think he's that talented at the receiver position. Then you have a guy like LaJohntay Wester, and Jimmy Horn. I'm going to throw them in the same boat.
Yeah,
both
speedsters,
in the slot, guys, deep crossing stuff, over the middle of the field stuff. They're mismatches against pretty much anybody. Then you have Will Shepherd, the Vanderbilt transfer, big body, vertical threat, red zone threat. Marion Miller fits that same description. And then you have the other kid. I'm trying to blank on his first name, but his last name is Miller as well as number 6. He gets in there. He does his thing as well. He's a true freshman. He's going to make a ton of plays for those guys. When I look at that room,
Draylon Miller.
Yes, I think they have the most complimentary group. They have somebody that does everything well, and they have two of them. They don't have two Travis Hunters, but they got at least two of their other guys. They got two of the vertical threats, big body guys, red zone guys, take the top off of you and win those 50-50 balls, and they have two of those intermediate slot gap demons in Western and Horn, and then the jack of all trades in Travis Hunter. So I have to give them credit for that. Have to give them credit for their ability to establish a little bit of a run game the last couple of weeks against Dave Aranda and Gus Malzahn-led teams. These aren't just
that's a big thing. The run game's doing just enough. Just enough.
And people are discredited, and this is what I don't like. Well, when it was North Dakota State, they're like, oh, they're beating North Dakota State. It's an FCS team. But North Dakota State, if you paid attention, is 8-1 in their last before that game. They were 8-1 in their last 9 FBS games. All right, the last time they lost the FBS game was to Arizona, and a game they led by 10 in the fourth quarter and had one of the most uncharacteristic collapses in their school's history. So they really should be they should have been 9-0 going into that game. North Dakota State is a very respectable program. Any other time they play a Big Ten school, people love them, but now they weren't anything. They played a Colorado. Okay, move on. They lose the Nebraska game. Didn't play well in that game in the first half. Lose that game, everybody's back off the train. Then they blow out Colorado State, and everybody's like, oh, it's Colorado State. Then we get to the Baylor game, and they beat Baylor, and it's like, you got to start taking them serious now. This is Dave Aranda. It's still not the cream of the crop here, but these are teams that they were getting blown out by before we got here, and these are teams that they were losing to last year. All right, but then they found a way to win that game, come back and beat them on their home floor. Then you follow it up the next week, and you come out and beat Gus Malzahn. Excuse me, I'm forgetting the game somewhere in there. But they come out and they blow out Gus Malzahn on his home floor. That doesn't happen, man. Like, Gus is a guy that's respected. He runs the ball down anybody's throat. That Colorado defense has only given up 26 points in the second half this entire
is it 26 even at this point?
That's 26 in 5 games.
Okay.
In the second half of football games. It's remarkable when you think about where they were last season and how easy it was to run the ball against them, how much they gave up points. They've given up 26 in the second half of ball games. And a couple of those touchdowns are in garbage time where they already have a pretty big lead. That is a brand new football team. They're playing really good top to bottom, and we got to give them their credit. If they lose, if they screw it up from here on out, we'll talk about it in that perspective, and we'll hold them accountable. But for right now, some of y'all got to eat y'all words and just give them what they deserve.
And Shiloh being out, I hate to say it. I hate to do it, guy. That defense has been playing lights the hell out since Shiloh's been out of the lineup, man.
Hey, man.
I don't know what to say about it besides that. And I can't even give you the reasons that's the case. Maybe the corners feel a little bit better. They can get some takeaways. They feel more comfortable with somebody else hanging over top of them in coverage. But I'm looking at the correlation. It's a positive correlation where Shiloh's been out and that defense has been on the uptick. Also, Shedeur Sanders, very freaking good. I'm tired of people like discounting him just because you don't like him. And I think with Coach Prime, I'm getting sick of this. I really am getting sick of the fact that you can't drop your bias to admit that the resume that he has put together in his young coaching career is very damn good. If his name wasn't Deion Sanders, you'd be saying, let's give him a job at Florida next year. That's what you'd be doing. It's a guy who won 2 state championships in high school. Then he goes to college at Jackson State, who's not used to having this success, wins 2 conference championships in a row, gets to the Celebration Bowl, takes over a 1-win team, triples their wins in year 1, is 4-1 in year 2, and 2-0 in a better conference than he was in a year ago. Like, I'm just, guys, at some point you're going to have to drop the anger and the vitriol and realize what we're watching. That's all I want from you. You can hate. I hate on plenty of things. I don't like Notre Dame. I don't necessarily like Miami. Like Ole Miss, Tennessee. I root on them to lose. That's fine. I completely understand that. But in the end of the day, I can objectively look at something and separate my feelings and talk about what it is.
Yep.
I can say Tennessee is one of the best athletic departments in the country, even though I don't like them.
Right.
I think people need to separate the nonsense, separate their bias, and talk about what we're watching, brother, because it's pretty damn impressive. It just is. Yeah. But on that note, I'll get off my soapbox. Let's get to winners and losers. I'll start with my winner, and I'm going to start right there with Colorado. It's Colorado. No doubt about it. Yeah, they're a little top heavy with their talent. I still agree with you on the wide receiver sort of message you put out there. They have one of everything that you possibly need. You have the big wide receiver, slot wide receivers with run after catch ability. You have the Travis Hunter who can go inside, outside, do whatever he wants. That defense is playing at a high level. And Coach Prime has those guys bought in and pulling in the right direction. I think way more than they did a year ago. And I always know when Colorado is having success under Coach Prime when people aren't talking about it, when people are being quiet about it. That's what I've become used to. So Colorado, my big winner of the week.
My winner of the week, and first of all, I agree with everything you just said there. It was dead quiet after that game, and if it had been if the score was the other way around, it would have looked like a hate parade. But that's neither here nor there. We know why. My biggest winner of the week is the Alabama young guys, and I just think it's remarkable, man. I was watching that game in awe when they were up, and then when they went down. It was the young guys that were making the plays. You look on the offensive side of the ball. Caden Proctor, 19 years old, true sophomore. Justice Haynes, true sophomore. Ryan Williams, true freshman. You look on the defensive side of the ball, Xavier Brown, true freshman. Red Morgan, true freshman. Jalen Mbakwe, true freshman. James Smith, redshirt freshman. I mean, Quay Russaw, redshirt freshman. There's so many guys on that team, on that field that are playing and contributing at a high level that are first or second year players. And that should be the most scary part. I mean, even some of the guys that are rotating in that are finding their way on the field, particularly on defense, and on the offense, they haven't even unleashed guys like Caleb Odom, who's a number 18. He's going to be one of the premier guys going forward here. Arion Hampton, Bubba Hampton at wide receiver. There's so many young guys that they're slowly going to work in over the course of the season and then over the course of next year. That should be like the scariest part, in my opinion. And this is kind of why I believe DeBoer and Saban, it was a perfect pass off at the perfect time, because you let the stock full of players at that caliber and kind of ease the transition in terms of talent. Most of the time, coaches can coach no matter where you are. It's just keeping that level of talent. If you're going up from a G5 or a lower level P4 to one of the premier programs, it's normally keeping the talent level that you had comparable to what you had before you got there. And this is not going to be an issue for Alabama. They have the best talent in the country, in my opinion, even though it's a lot of young guys. So giving them credit, because it's one thing to have the talent. It's another thing to develop those guys and get them out there playing on a stage like that against Kirby Smart in Georgia. So those guys played their ass off. I got to give them a big kudos, because that's some rare stuff. I don't think I've ever seen that many young players, first and second year players, be impact players in a game like that. That's talent.
I think that's fair, and there's a more runway for him. And Kalen DeBoer, as much as people want to doubt and sort of, think of him differently than Nick Saban, I feel like he's going to have that program in a similar situation year after year after year. But time will tell. Now, my big loser of the week, I'm going to go with Hugh Freeze, and really Auburn too, but I'm going with Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze is going to be on the hot seat before this year's over. There's no doubt in my mind. That was a game he needed against Oklahoma, number 21 team in the country, with Michael Hawkins Jr. at quarterback, unheralded 3-star. Jackson Arnold, the 5-star, got sat down. There's a little bit of weirdness going on with that Oklahoma program right now. You caught him in a good spot, in my opinion. And, you look at the rest of the schedule for Auburn: at Mizzou, at Kentucky, versus Vandy, which I'm not even going to just give them that one. Sure, you can have UL Monroe. I'll give you that. But then A&M and Bama to end the year, they're going to be really scrounging to try to get to 6 wins. They really are. When you look at their schedule, they're 2-3. But their 2 wins are against Alabama, A&M, and New Mexico. Then they've lost to Cal, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. And the way they lost to Oklahoma has to be the most frustrating thing in the world, because you're up 21-16 late in the game, 4 minutes to go. Peyton Thorne has been he's been playing out of his mind. He played a great game up until that point. He finished 21 for 32 for 338 and 3 touchdowns, but the 1 interception was a pick 6 taken all the way the other way, and Oklahoma ultimately wins the game because of it. And I just look at that Auburn program and the thoughts they had with Hugh Freeze. I think he's still recruiting at a high level right now. If you go to 247, I think he's top 5 with his recruiting rankings, but we know more losses could make that change. And if you have a bunch of recruits that see some perceived dysfunction, that could change pretty quickly. I don't think this is headed in the right direction with Hugh Freeze. I just don't see it right now.
Yeah, I've been workshopping to say this might be the one we clip up this week. If Auburn was a serious program, I think they would do everything in their power to make Hugh Freeze the general manager of that team and go get a real football coach at this point. I'm not saying Hugh Freeze is not a real football coach. I'm just saying I think he is far along as a GM, recruiting guru, fundraiser. He's the guy that loves to go to those golf tournaments. He's the guy that loves to go to those fundraisers. He loves to recruit. Imagine having a guy like Hugh Freeze at the end of his tenure, end of his career, running that side of the program and go get you one of these coaches, young, old, what have you, that are just going to be the CEO and run the damn football team and focus on the football, the X's and O's, and that's all they have to worry about. I think Auburn will be off in a much better position than they are right now if they had somebody that they could do that with. So, actually, don't put that up because I have way too many Auburn fans that follow me and they'll be after me, but it's just the principle for me. It's like, I think he's fantastic at that. But how long are you going to give him to recruit well, but not show anything on the field? I mean, this isn't year one. This is year three. We're going into year 3 here, I believe. This is something that you need to see progress from. You put too much money into.
Is it year 2? I think it's year 2.
2, 3. I don't care. It's year 3. You're supposed to be winning.
It's Auburn, and it's year 2, and we have the NIL. We have transfer portal. You turn these things around quickly. 2 and 3 in year 2.
It's the way that they're losing. It's not like they don't. That's what's like frustrating to me, and I couldn't care less about Auburn. I grew up Alabama fan my entire life, but it's the way that they're losing. I hate bad football in bad moments. They've been the most talented team. They were a more talented team than Cal, a more talented team than Arkansas, in my opinion. More talented team than Oklahoma, probably top to bottom, at least with the injuries that Oklahoma has with those guys out. You were the more talented team on the field Saturday.
They didn't even have a wide receiver room, Oklahoma. Jaleel Farouk, Nick Anderson, Deion Burks, everybody was out.
Man, I feel for the Auburn defense because they're playing their ass off every week. They're giving them a chance. I truly do think they have a very solid defense. But, man, it's just not enough for me right now. I know that's your point. I don't want to harp on it.
Right. No, I'm with you, though. I think your point is well taken, to be honest with you. Like Hugh Freeze's calling card is bringing in good recruiting classes, speaking well behind closed doors to donors to get them to donate money. Yep. From a coaching perspective, I always thought there was something amiss. I played his teams. When they played us, they played down to competition.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not going to say we were a worse team. I think we were the better team. I'm not shitting on my 2015 brethren right now. But at the same time, they didn't take us serious. Right. And there's just this overwhelming arrogance to a Hugh Freeze run program and to Hugh Freeze himself that I don't think is going to ingratiate himself to any of those Auburn fans. You can't come out every week after a loss against a team that you should have beat and say, well, if we play them 9 more times, we'd beat them. Well, you lost. You already lost, brother. And it's the problem I have with him. It's never his fault. Just never his fault for anything. It's just trash. It's like, brother, accept that you are losing these games. You did not set your team up for success. Every time your quarterback throws a pick, by the way, I'm not going to put that directly onto him all the time. You need to be trying to coach him up behind closed doors. Don't just throw him under the bus every chance you get. It's just frustrating, man. Hugh Freeze is a frustrating person to follow, and I know those Auburn fans are beside themselves right now. Now, give me your loser.
My loser is Ole Miss, simply for the fact that, and this is why it's kind of funny to me because I'm about to give them a little bit of hell, but the 12-team playoff just makes all of what I'm saying pointless because they can still do everything I'm about to say. But they invested all this money, right? You go out and get Walter Nolan's in the transfer portal. You get Juice Wells types in the transfer portal. You invest all this money into the program. You finally have your defense playing at a good high level. I can't blame their defense for that game. They were on the field for 40 minutes, but they only gave up 20 points. I mean, they were making Kentucky earn every drive. They did it, but they had to go the length of the field. They had to grind it out. They had to play powerful ball and really gut out that performance to put up points. I can't blame the defense for that. This is the one way that they weren't supposed to be able to lose. If your defense is keeping teams in the 17-20 range, Lane Kiffin, Jackson Darnell offense is supposed to be able to put up at least 21 points a week, against whoever. This is the one way that you couldn't lose. This is the one way on a stage like that in front of the national audience against a team that we just saw lose to get blown out by South Carolina, play Georgia tough. So this shouldn't have been a sneak-up game either. To me, this isn't a trap game. This is a game that you should have been on alert for. This is a game you should have been ready for. It's SEC play. It's Mark Stoops. It's Kentucky defense. It's just the one type of game that I didn't foresee them losing. I thought maybe they would get to a team that probably has a little bit better trenches on both sides and maybe get dominated like they did against Alabama and Georgia last year. I could have saw that happen in a game getting away from them early. They weren't quite able to come back. I could see that happen. I could see them getting to a game where they get into a shootout with the team, and maybe they just like they did with LSU last year, and maybe they end up on the wrong side of that shootout this year. But I didn't see a game like this happening where the defense plays well enough for you to win. Everybody's relatively healthy. You have your full stable of guys on offense. I know Parrish was dealing with some cramps there in the second half. But even then, that's a preparation thing to me. Like you shouldn't be cramping up in week 5 of the season. That goes to your preparation. I'm just really disappointed with those guys because this was the year. This is the runaway year. You have all these talent. You don't have to play Alabama in the regular season anymore. You don't have to worry about divisions anymore. Win 10 games, win 11 games during the playoffs. Simple as that. And they just made it that much harder for them to do that because they have some tough games. I mean, we look at the Georgia game as the game that everybody's giving them the loss in, but they have some games that they can lose before, as they just proved Saturday. Kentucky wouldn't beat them with not much offense, just running the ball down your throat for 4 quarters and living and dying with that. So it was really interesting to see that. But I think if Lane is who I think he is, he'll use this. He'll come out with some of his most crafty, and maybe they need to go away from that a little bit, but he'll come out with some of his best stuff going forward. And I think that they'll put up a ton of points and really not leave much doubt anymore. But it was really disappointing to see them lose like that.
But they don't have wiggle room anymore for that college football playoff berth, so they're going to have to be careful. But let's go ahead and grab our first break, and when we come back, we're going to get to our guests, and we're going to get you ready for action. How about that? We're going to bring on a couple of guests. We're going to have 2 guests with us. We're going to bring on Ohio AD Julie Cromer and also Ohio football head coach Tim Albin. They're next. I just came away saying this is a guy who will go probably the rest of his career, probably have no incidents. I think there's a lot of guys that come into the league that get as famous and get that celebrity as fast as he did coming from Murray State, unheralded guy, and they don't know how to handle it. When I brought up like how he feels and his mentality and what shifted to make him happier with himself on a day-to-day basis, he was like, well, listen, tomorrow I may feel shitty. Tomorrow I may struggle with the things that I struggled with before, but it's a day-to-day battle for me now. I notice myself thinking a certain way or acting a certain way. I can check myself in that moment.
He did a live super late last night. He was out working out, and he gets on there and he's
this type of live. It ain't that type of live.
He said it's alive, but it ain't that type of live. I was like, my guy is back. To me, that tells me he's comfortable in his skin, bro, and that is all you can ask for. Tune in to On the Bluff with Christian Fowler and Gabe Kuhn every Tuesday at 12 p.m. on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
We turned down the Pac-2, 7, whatever they are, last Monday, and then Thursday. It was Thursday, right? That
folks calling for Ed Scott's job, calling him a fraud, a clown.
It's wild because my guy's been here for like 36 hours.
They wanted to fire Ed Scott,
but he addressed the situation. 25 minutes, basically laid it all out there, and there were a lot of people very upset by it and frustrated. TJ and I were the ones that I feel like we're on the side like, hey, we know the details that made sense. We know why we said no. But after hearing from Dr. Scott, a lot of people are kind of like, all right, I get it. It makes sense. We've talked about this before. The dude is an elite communicator.
Given what you had on the table as fans, it was a bad deal.
Tune in to Tigers Untapped with TJ Willis and Trey Lasley every Wednesday at 3 p.m. on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
Back in on the G5 Classified podcast, we have an Ohio University takeover, and we have AD Julie Cromer and head coach Tim Albin. How are you guys doing?
We're great. All's good in Athens.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Now, I want to start with the way this season has played out so far. You had Mac play start last week, got the win. Coach Albin, how are you feeling heading into sort of the heart of your schedule in conference?
Well, very excited. As you mentioned, got the conference opener win last week on homecoming. A great weekend. And anytime you can start tournament play 1-0, that's going to be a positive for your team. but really, now we have an open week, so which is much needed coming off the non-conference schedule. But we're very excited to be where we are.
Yeah, Coach. I wanted to ask you a question because this is kind of interesting. Doing a little bit of research, you've led 9 of the 10 best offensive units in Ohio Bobcat football history. What is that like? I mean, can you kind of talk about where you founded the principles for your offense and how you've had to adjust over the years to be that sustainable over college football that's changed a million times over that 10-year stretch?
I appreciate that question, and anytime that you've been somewhere as long as I have, 20 years, I would think there's going to be some records broke at 20 years at one place. But I spent 21 years with Coach Solich. That's I am in his coaching tree. I learned a lot of football from him over the years. And prior to really working for him at Nebraska, I was visiting there consistently. And so, but to your point, there has been some things that have evolved, from when I first started with Coach. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about having really, really good players, I mean, you got to have some structure. Everybody knows that. But players win games, and coaches just get the best 11 on the field, and they have to make adjustments, yes. But the evolving from under center to shotgun is a big thing. No huddle to no huddle is a thing that's in these 20 years. And Ohio has done a good job in making those adjustments, and it's proved to be consistent for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is a question for both of you. You talk about getting good players. And I want to start with you, Julie. When it comes to name, image, and likeness, what do you have to do as an athletic director to really hone in on that and make sure you're giving the resources to all your coaches, just like Coach Albin?
Yeah, well, I think it starts with really understanding the landscape, which we put a lot of time into here. We were first in the MAC and a lot of moves going all the way back to 2021. First in with influencer, first in on the influencer exchange, which connects our student athletes to marketing opportunities, first in on group licensing, and first in on a number of other platforms, including one that allows our fans to connect directly with our student athletes and our student athletes to do instructional videos for them to earn what I would describe as legitimate NIL opportunities. And so we focused a lot on being first to the market in our league and among the first in many of the group of 5 conferences. And every now and then, we've been there first before some Power 4 schools as well. I think it also is about education of our student athletes. We have a lot of athletes at this level who are involved in a lot of things. Yes, they're involved in sports. They're great students. Some of them want to be entrepreneurs. Some of them also have other side interests. And so we spent a lot of time with our student athletes over the last 3 years. Tim will tell you we've done a lot of things with the football team specifically to help them understand how to tell their story and to monetize their ideas and monetize their business ideas, particularly in a way that, again, sets them up to have a portfolio when they leave us, wherever they may go, so that they can continue to earn that revenue. And then obviously, we've been engaged in the collective space like a lot of other institutions as well. And we're working at the state level and the national level to try to open that up so that it's more consistent from state to state and school to school, and that we have a clearer opportunity to understand what's within the rules and not. And, we like to be aggressive. We like to be right up on that line, but not over it. And so we've spent a lot of time actually over the last 3.5 years going back to before the Alston decision that really blew everything open and actually happened about the same time that Coach Albin assumed the head coaching role. So for him, he could tell you about how the landscape has changed, but we've done a lot to be right on the forefront, particularly in line with our group of 5 peers in that space.
Yeah. Now, Coach, how much for you has the game changed? How much of an adjustment have you had to make with your players being able to take advantage of these opportunities, with them being pulled in different directions? Because I know there has been some level of adjustment at every single level of college football.
Yeah. How much time do you got?
We got plenty.
Yeah. No, I mean, really, the landscape it's a different animal. I mean, as I mentioned, working for Coach Solich, known him for probably close to 30 years, worked for him for 21. We talk weekly, but he doesn't have a lot of advice or help or assistance with what you just asked me, how it's changed. read ESPN.com. It's all out there, you know. And so I have, you know, been drinking through a fire hose on some of the things. But, you know, Director Cromer has helped on some ideas. But there's a lot to it. And when it's, you know, when players come knock on your door, you know, you sit down and you be transparent, and you got to have facts and listen to their story and have a candid conversation and what's best for them. That ultimately, that's what my job is. That's what our staff's job is. What's best for them. And we all know that you got to win games to stay employed. That's what it is. But at the end of the day, I think what is best individually for each athlete. And then I've got to say this. There's a lot of things that you have to do as a head coach now to stay relevant. You know, there's two pieces to this NIL. There's NIL, which the answer that Director Cromer gave is exactly, you know, we're all in, right? There's a lot of stories about that. We actually had a class for our entire football team this past summer in July that dealt directly with NIL and how to use it, whether it be a football camp in your hometown, what you got to go through. You got to get insurance. You got to hire employees. You got to rent the space. I mean, there's so many things that are positive out of that we do here. And then you got the collective piece, which I know that's probably what you want me to go into, and it's there. And there's a lot to it, but it is new. And our staff, along with Director Cromer and our administration, are doing all we can to stay relative.
Yep. And well, real quick, and the thing is about name, image, and likeness, the original thought of it is not actually how it's being applied. Do you guys both sort of agree with that sentiment when it comes to just sort of how this thing has played out over the past few years since it's been implemented?
I'll go first, Julie. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, right.
I'm going to give two examples, and there's 1,000. Okay, I was at Nebraska when Eric Crouch played there. All right, and there is no professional team in the state. It's the only thing in the state as far as big time sports. All right, I mean, it's the only university. So every game's been sold out since 1962, and the number of number 7 jerseys. I have one in my basement hanging up, autographed from Eric. All right, Eric was not able to take advantage of any of that, and this was from 2001. All right, and he was not able to take advantage of any of that until after graduation. All right, and then my next door neighbor is Joe Burrow, and I know what he went through, at LSU. And was not able to capitalize on it. Those are just two stories that I am close to. All right. And I can go on and on and on. But I think that's what the intent of it is, along with what I've already mentioned, And so, again, I'm on board with it, but there's got to be some guardrails. I'm sure Director Cromer is going to get into some of that stuff. We've got to get through this litigation that's out there now. We've got to get back to some of the old, it's a level playing field. We have Ohio University has benefited, won games because of a level playing field. And right now, and directly to your question, it's not.
And Julie, what do you think about the application of the way that we have seen NIL actually applied as opposed to what we thought it was going to be going in? Now, I guess we could have, foreseen the way that it may have been used, especially by the powers that be in the Power Five, but it feels like the application's a lot different than what we thought.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'll tell you, I've been here 5 years. Before I was here, I was in the SEC. And we were at that time in the SEC, in the Southeastern Conference, talking about what became NIL. Talking about these developments and talking about them in the context of guardrails, understanding the environment, throughout our country, whether you're a Group of 5 school, Power 4 school, an FCS program, we're all in this era now together. And, so back then, 6 or 7 years ago, we were trying to imagine what the market's response would be if we entered a phase of intended NIL without guardrails. And of all the possibilities that were on the table, we have landed in potentially the worst version of events. And so what I do, Tim and I, Coach Albin and I talk about this all the time. In fact, we talk about it with all of our 13 head coaches. He'll tell you we have a monthly head coaches meeting, and we're all talking about a shifting landscape. So this is a football issue, but it's also and other sports issue. Mm-hmm. And, I think ultimately we're in a state of flux. As we've talked about, I think that we'll land in some different regulatory space in the coming years, but it's super bumpy right now because we've got 1 foot in the past and 1 foot trying to land in the future. And so we keep talking about what our unique value proposition here at Ohio University is as a member of the Mid-American Conference within the Group of Five. I can tell you that's a different student experience than it is in some of the other conferences. And we believe in it just as much as I did in my time in the SEC and the Big Ten. We believe in what we offer right here at Ohio. And so we talk about that. And that's what Tim was talking about when he said, you got to figure out what's best for you as a player. And there are a lot of advantages to playing at Ohio that you don't have, if you play in a school up the road, even in our state. And so we lean into that. There's something really special about the Group of Five experience, and we're unabashed about that. And it may or may not come with all the collective action that you might get somewhere else, but it comes with a lot of really valuable things that we are sure to include as part of the overall package when we talk to our recruits in any sport, whether they're coming out of the portal or they're coming out of high school.
Awesome. And, I have one more for you, Ms. Cromer. You were the first woman to be the athletic director at Ohio University. You're also one of the first women to work in the operations side at the Big Ten level. Can you talk about what it feels like? Is there a sense of honor, or is there a sense of pressure, maybe a little bit of both, to kind of carry that flag and be a woman in that position, especially a relatively young woman? I mean, you don't see this very often. Obviously not at Ohio. You are the actual first woman. So what does that feel like?
Well, I have to tell you, you just became my favorite by saying I'm a relatively young woman. So I appreciate that. There is honor and pressure in every AD job in the country. And, I understand your question. When you're the first at anything, it looks a little bit different, and everybody probably feels like they have to adjust a little bit. So I take it as my responsibility to try to ease that adjustment for them. And I can also tell you that there have been other women who've come along who could have done this job, both here at Ohio. We had back in the day, way back before any of us were around, we had women leading women's only athletic departments for a number of decades in the earliest stages of college sports and college sports for women. And so, it's important for me to honor them and say, if they had come along at this time, maybe they would have had the opportunity as well. I just benefited from the time and benefited from a school and leadership. Coach Solich was on the search committee that selected me, and Tim will remember that exercise. And I don't think it was a secret that he maybe had somebody else in the pool that he was close to, that he initially hoped would emerge as the AD. But I have to tell you, over the course of that process and immediately from day one, Coach Solich was in my corner. And, we talked a lot about what we needed to do to invest in the football program from the time I arrived in 2019. Tim was here. He can tell you how things have changed over the last 5 years. And so, but for a response like Frank Solich's response, you can ask Coach yourself someday. Tim, you can ask him, later today or tomorrow. I'm not sure if he ever thought about whether or not he'd have a woman AD, but I'll tell you, he didn't blink an eye. And what I have found in this experience, going all the way back to 12 years ago, when I became a football sport administrator in the Big Ten, a lot has changed in those 12 years. But every coach along the way wanted to do one thing, and that was win. And so it doesn't matter where you come from and what your background is or who you are. If you can help a coaching staff win, if you can bring something to that equation, then they want to work with you. And that's the thing that I've focused on for, the last 12 or so years. Thank you for that, Kai.
Coach, can you kind of talk about what a Power 5 win does for your program? I mean, You were able to go down to, Iowa State last year and get a very impressive win. Can you kind of talk about what that stage does for Group of 5 teams? Because, I'm an FCS kid myself. We're not G5. I was a Jacksonville State kid. We went to overtime with Auburn, and we lost the game. People still talk about it 10 years later like we won it. That stage is just invaluable for programs of this nature. Can you kind of talk about what that does for recruiting and just the overall sense of morale for your team?
Well, the obvious answer is it's when you're able to get a win like that, it's all positive. And
right.
We all know how that can affect your program. But my experience tells me that you got to keep an even keel with it and approach each game one at a time. And we just, whether it doesn't matter who we play, we're going to respect all, fear none, and go through our process. As I'm going to steal from Coach Saban. All right. He's about the process. You got to enjoy the process, not so much the outcome. I firmly believe in that philosophy. And then after a game, win or lose, you got to correct the mistakes, win or lose, the same way. Once you start, okay, this week we're playing our arch rival, or you're playing, whomever, Iowa State or whomever it is. Once you start going down that road, it's a slippery slope. That's how I see it. It's just not worth the risk versus the reward. It's not enough there to do that. But we all know that if you come out victorious in one of those games, you just seen it in our conference with Northern Illinois, Toledo, and then again, that's great. And both those programs have beaten Power Fours teams before, as we have. I've been here 20 years, and we've had our share of those too. But then you got to play the next week, And so you get around and sit around and listen to how good you are and all the things that you got done. You're not ready to go at your best for the next opportunity. And that's where, as a head coach, you gotta find that fine line and have an even keel. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah, and then Northern Illinois ended up turning around and losing to Buffalo right there in the MAC. So, it's just –
I didn't say that you did, but
I said it. You didn't say it. I'm just saying, it happens quickly.
Thank you for giving us, the most thorough answer we've had thus far. I know we do this a lot. Gabe's a radio guy, right? And we do a lot of these. And we don't get this thorough answers and more detailed answers all the time. So I appreciate that. You're making this enjoyable.
Now, I do want to ask one more thing here for you, Julie. When it comes to realignment, and you're starting to see Mountain West and talking to Northern Illinois and Toledo, and they're trying to become whole again. What have you thought of just sort of the breaking down of the geographic lines and just where we are from a general sense with realignment? You're chasing the money. I understand people have to do that in this current situation. And that's just sort of where we are as a college athletic society. But what do you think about where we're at, where you have the ACC with all these different schools here on the West Coast, and the Big Ten has all these schools on the West Coast. The Pac-12 tried to reach out to my alma mater, Memphis, which would have been a strange fit in general. They ended up saying no, but hey, we are where we are. But you just sort of talk to me about how you feel about where we're at from a realignment standpoint.
Well, realignment is evergreen. I've been in this industry almost 30 years, and at all levels, we've had, waves of realignment that entire stretch, and going back before. I grew up in Missouri. I'm a kid who remembers the Big 8 conference and the rivalries there, and it's hard to find those anymore. And so I would say what we see now is less reorganization around regional layout or regional rivalries, and much more a collection of brands. We went through a phase where realignment was about TV markets. And now that we see more streaming and an evolution of the traditional media rights markets to include a lot of different platforms, maybe those markets do or don't matter as much anymore. Maybe we're phasing into a new era of media rights revenue in that regard. And so people are collecting brands. And what I think is really interesting about being in the Mid-American Conference is we've been able to retain that regionality that no other conference has been able to retain in the FBS. And at the same time, a lot of the strength of our brand is in those Thursday night action games that were referenced earlier, and in the competitive nature of our league. And so, we won't go back to what happens after a Power 4 win and train, Tim's points about staying even and level keeled as you work your way through this season. But I will say, I'm not surprised at all that we've had teams who looked like they were giant killers one week and then came in and ran into a rough, MAC competition and a rough MAC team the next week, because that's what our league is. And so, we've all been on that roller coaster to a degree. And it's one of the really cool things about MACtion. So I think it'll be interesting to see our league as we move forward, particularly perhaps redefine FBS, perhaps reimagine what the group of 5 looks like overall. We've got another 6 or 7 years where there is some semblance of media contract connection and legality among schools and in the conferences that are jumping around now. That's what everyone's repositioning for. And then there's a big question mark about what happens in the 2030s in 8 or 9 years from now and what the landscape looks like.
Mm-hmm. Now, final thing I want to get from both of you guys is, and I guess we'll start with you, Coach, because this is a football podcast first and foremost, so I want to get your opinion. Why should a player or a coach go to the Ohio University? What are the selling points that you put down when you're on the recruiting trail? What ultimately should bring a player or a coach to Athens?
Yeah, I can go for days on it, because Ohio University is a special place. Academically, we're going to crush it. You look at our graduation rates and what we're able to get done. Those last 2, we've won 5 straight bowl games, back-to-back 10-win seasons. Just the last 2 bowl games on those back-to-back 10 seasons, the number, we're at 60 grads, or 55 and 57 guys that already had a diploma. All right. I'm certain double-digit master's degrees, and that had zero to do with COVID. They got an extra year. No, the guys that had an extra year got 2 master's degrees. All right. That is a fact. So you start with that, but then just the consistency piece of the staff. All right. I've been here the longest at 20 years, but I've got guys on the staff, probably 5 or 6 guys. 4 to 5 guys that have been over 10. Okay. And then I've got 3 guys on staff that were students here, and then grad assistants, and now full-time. And 2 of the 3 all 3 have a coordinator by their name. All right. Special teams, recruiting, and run game coordinator. So they were a part of this university, walking between buildings, knowing the shortcut to Comp 2. All right. And those types of things. All right. And so I've got a long history with it, but at the end of the day, we are developing men the right way. Everyone says I love you, we love you. But to me, the definition of love is, hey, we're going to be transparent with you, tell you the truth. I mentioned that earlier, and we're going to hold you accountable. And I think with our resources academically, with our player development things that we do with Coach D'Lo, and the academic piece of this, it's a win-win. These young men are going to leave here with a college experience that's holistic, that's going to help them be better husbands and fathers, based on what they see from our staff. And oh yeah, by the way, we win enough games to stay here. So that's what it is. So I think it's, there's a lot of things in there, a lot of content. When you're somewhere for 20 years, you got a lot to say.
Before you go, Ms. Cromer, I want to say that one of my last talking points for you was you guys have a record graduation rate among athletes since you've been there. So I'm kind of glad that we asked that, because Coach kind of covered it a little bit. So can you kind of speak to that success? Because that's very rare. I mean, anytime, like I said, you're the first woman to be there as the athletic director, but you had that fast record of success, carrying with the football success, and you kind of overhauled the academic administration there. I mean, you administer mental health programs, you administer leadership programs, inclusion programs. Can you talk about getting all that done in such a little amount of time?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Nobody does any of that alone.
Right.
So, we had just opened a new academic support building as I arrived. So I can't take credit for that.
Okay.
What we focused on, and the results speak for themselves. We have a terrific faculty here. We have alignment on this campus that is stronger than any campus I've ever been on. And so, we produce graduates and winners, period. But the changes we made in our department had much more to do with making sure we were efficiently managing our resources so we can pour everything we can towards support of the programs. When I arrived, we had a fractured culture. We had dusty facilities. We had an outdated revenue model. And, Tim will tell you, we were pretty fractured as a department. And so a lot of what I tried to do was find the strengths we had as a campus and lean into that. We did triple down in sports medicine. We didn't have enough trainers for all of our programs to be supported. We didn't have enough trainers for football. And, we had a couple guys who were in there working in an old facility that, really weren't able to take care of the team. We didn't have enough strength coaches. We addressed that. You're right. We didn't have a single person working toward an independent development, leadership, inclusion, student athlete voice unit. We created that. But we shifted some resources in the department away from some outdated thinking and maximized what we could. We have I try to have a 3X policy here. And what I mean by that is not necessarily a sweatshirt size. It's literally 3 return, 3 times the return, whether it's in dollars, time, efficiency, energy. And we've got to do that in order to be successful at this level. So we triple down on digital strategies. We're broadcasting more than we have ever before. Yes, we're supporting our student athletes more. Tim will tell you we've completely reimagined the fan experience here. We've done all of that without raising ticket prices yet. And so we really wanted to put ourselves in position for the changes that are coming. We paid off all of our debt. We've got some great facility projects that we've been able to have some upgrades around the football facilities over the last couple of years. And now we are positioned for whatever we're moving toward in this era, whether it is NIL coming in-house, whether it's rev share, it's additional resources in order to stay at the FBS level. I think we've really understood that something was coming, even though we still don't all completely know what it is, and we wanted to be ready for it. And so that's the energy and time and intention on what we've done here over the last few years coming out of COVID.
Yeah, you got to have a lot of foresight, and it seems like you guys both have that. But Director Cromer, Coach Albin, I really appreciate your time, and you guys have been very gracious. And good luck the rest of the season.
Hey guys, thanks. Thanks for covering the Group of Five and for focusing on this part of college football. It is incredibly valuable, so we appreciate what you do. Absolutely wouldn't miss it.
Thank you very much. This is today is the last day without a football game on until November 27th. So this is a college football podcast. All right, let's go.
Let's do it. Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Our big three is going to be phenomenal. And I'm going to tell you the man that I think is going to make us unfair. Zach Edey at Media Day was saying some shit. If you are a basketball fan, should have had your spidey senses tingling.
When he specifically said it's some parts of his game that nobody know about, it was that got me. I said, oh.
I've never felt this good about what I'm saying about a rookie about what I'm saying about Zach Edey, including John Morant, bro. And there are certain things that Zach Edey says that make the hair on my neck stand up when he says them. He says something like, I'm still learning the game, but when I learn something and you tell me something, I don't want you to have to tell it to me again. Which means this man might be a computer. He may be AI. He may be a robot. He may be a basketball machine. And when he talks like he's downloading new software of things that he's got to add to his package.
Tune in to The Anthony Sane Show, Wednesdays and Fridays at 12 p.m. weekly on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
I was going to start today's show by talking Grizzlies and saying Vince Williams Jr., what's he going to be? What do we expect in this year after last year? And then he got hurt, so I scrapped that. We saw Gigi Jackson yesterday, of course, at Media Day. He's hurt.
Wheeling
We
himself
knew
around.
that. We knew that.
Right.
Okay, that's fine though. We even talked about it. Hey, at least it happened early,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Camp starts today, and Jaron Jackson Jr.'s got hamstring tightness. I'm not freaking out, man. I'm not freaking out. I'm not. It's everything is fine. Everything is fine. everything is fine. Nothing is screwed up, Brevin. Everything is fine.
You know what I said?
What?
What the hell? That's what I said.
Man, what's going on, dude?
Tune in to the Night Court Podcast with your hosts, Rob Fisher and Brevin Knight, on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
Back in episode 6 of G5 Classified. Appreciate Julie Cromer and Tim Albin for joining us, but we have to get into our G5 check-in. Leads us right into our G5 check-in, and we have a lot to check in on this week. And I want to start with Navy and Army, brother. This is going to be strange, man. Like, they are both undefeated, and they both are really in a spot where you could potentially see them as a group of 5 college football playoff rep. Now, I understand Boise State. We'll talk about them in a second. They're trending in the right direction. They have a couple of really good wins, marquee wins. But you look at Army in particular, and I don't know how they got this schedule, their first year in the AAC, but the rest of their schedule is as follows. Tulsa, UAB, East Carolina, Air Force in a down year, North Texas, UTSA, and then before – it'll be right after, I believe, the selection show. They're going to play Navy. It's not even a conference game, but Army is rolling. Navy's rolling in a big way too. I saw a stat about Blake Horvath. They played UAB, won 41-18. Blake Horvath, their quarterback, had another good game. 13 carries, 84 yards, touchdown, 9 for 11, 225 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had 2 70-yard touchdowns in the same game. I think he's the only quarterback to be able to accomplish that so far this year. But I saw a stat. He has, before he gets touched, he's averaging 7 yards before he gets touched when he runs the ball. And then after that, he's averaging 4.5 to 5 yards after contact. That offense is very good, like very good. And we're going to actually have Brian Newberry on the show next week. I'm going to totally spoil that right now. But we'll talk to him about it. Their offense, the wrinkles they've thrown in there, getting into shotgun, throwing the ball around, that is a completely different program offensively than we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I think it was Colt Kublik that tweeted it out. But this is the first time that Army and Navy have been undefeated at this point in the season since, I believe, the 40s, the mid-40s. I don't want to butcher the actual year, but it's been that long since they've both been undefeated at this point in the season. So it's crazy to see that. And can you imagine, though, like a game like that, maybe an undefeated or maybe 1 or 2, even a 2-loss, if they're sitting at 10-2.
They both have Notre Dame, so you can project a loss.
Right. Let's say they're both sitting at 10-2 even. When you get to the Army-Navy game, can you imagine that? I mean, it's already super incredible, like in terms of atmosphere and intensity, no matter what their records are. But could you imagine with 10 wins and maybe an 11-win season on the line? That would be an incredible story for college football. I would love to see something like that. So I'm rooting for those guys the rest of the way out. But they are dynamic, man. I think I was watching Army play. I believe it was Temple that they played this past weekend on that Friday night. They just dominated them, man. I know there's not a ton of people coming to Temple games anyway, but you look at the stands in the third quarter, the stands are pretty much empty, and they're just keeping their foot on the gas. It was still pretty crazy to see. It looked like a team that didn't just expect to be there and be happy to compete. Like, they have a little bit of swag about them. They got a little bit of demeanor about them. They look like they believe they're a really good football team, and they're playing like it, so it's cool to see that.
Now, if it came down to where one of those two teams was a college football playoff representative, I got to be honest. And I respect our troops. I respect both those programs. That would be gross. That'd be gross. I'm sorry. Like, imagine a first-round game of them if they won the American Athletic Conference against Georgia. Oh, God, man, I'm sorry. I would not look forward to that one because I'd feel bad. I mean, obviously, I want to see, like, Navy and Army getting that opportunity would be damn cool. It would be really cool. But you know that game would not go as planned, if you will. That would not be very fun. Now let's move on. Boise State gets the win over Washington State 45-24. Another marquee win for them. Washington State had been rolling. John Mateer, really good quarterback, and Washington State was undefeated until this week. And they got their ass kicked. And behind another Ashton, Jeanty, miraculous performance. I don't know what more we can say about the guy. But in this game, he had 26 attempts, 259 yards, 4 touchdowns. He, at this point, threw 4 games. 4 games. 82 attempts, 845 yards, 13 touchdowns. He is averaging 10.3 yards per carry. I know that by the end of the year, the Heisman will likely go to the best quarterback, although it looks a little different with Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty. But Ashton Jeanty, he's making his case to be in New York regardless of where this Boise State season ends, man. He is the team. That's what it feels like, especially offensively.
Yeah, and I think the thing that is great for Jeanty's case is that Boise State's not some, regular G5 program. They have a national imprint. They have a national brand, and they're pretty damn good this season. And he's the main reason why. They're a nationally ranked team. Their team is going to be there hovering around the 20s. Maybe can get up to high as 17 or 16, depending on the action below them if they're able to sustain this win. Because they have some decent platforms. They have a UNLV game that's going to be on a Friday night. They have an Oregon State game that's going to be on a Friday night. Jeanty's going to have some national stages to really shine. And if they're able to run the table the rest of the way out, they're going to be in that playoff conversation firmly. So it's not like you can discount Jeanty on the fact that he plays for a Boise State at this point, because they're going to be one of the teams that are vying for playoff spot, and they've shown that they can play with anybody in the country when they went to Oregon in a game that I'm still frustrated about, because I still feel like
they could have won it. They should have won it, really.
So Jeanty in his Heisman case, in my opinion, is extremely strong, because he's going to put up historic numbers, and they're probably going to be in the thick of the playoff hunt because of that. That's the definition of outstanding. So if those people that are watching those games, or please stay up and watch those games if you have those votes. I know the West Coast gets some, faulted sometimes in these voting systems because it's so Southern and East Coast heavy with the media and how that goes. But man, I'm taking it back every week, because this is the guy that I've been watching for the last 3 years. I thought he was one of the best players in the country last season, and he didn't get utilized enough. Well, they're flipping that on his head this year. He's almost at 1,000 yards in 5 games coming up here. So I think the biggest thing for him is going to be they're going to have to find a way to load manage. I don't know if he can sustain this type of load the entire season. So that passing game is going to have to come along a little bit. They're going to have to create some more explosives in the passing game, because that's the only thing that concerns me about a Heisman campaign and a playoff spot for Boise, because they have been my G5 selection for the playoffs this entire season, preseason as well. So they have to find a way to get the other guys involved, because I don't think there's a running back in the country. Maybe he has a Derrick Henry type year where he can sustain those 30 carries, 30 touches total a game. But that concerns me a little bit. As dynamic and as remarkable of a back as he is, give him a little bit of help here, and we'll see.
Right. I feel like my top 2 Heisman candidates right now, kind of the same question, Travis Hunter and him.
Yeah,
it's like you got to be careful about how many snaps they're playing, how much of a pounding they're taking on their body. You just have to be careful with it, because I think if they play 11, 12 games this year, hell, with Travis Hunter, maybe even 10, and he could be in New York. You just got to be careful to make sure they last the whole season. But I do feel good. Our opening show, we talked about the best group of 5 conference. I said the Mountain West, and maybe not necessarily top to bottom, but they're definitely top heavy. Boise State's proven that as number 21 in the country. Now you look at UNLV at number 25 in the country. And we talked about it last week. Matthew Sluka stepped away because of an NIL disagreement, but that didn't matter at all. In fact, I get the sense they might be a better team right now with Hajj Malik Wiliams at quarterback. And you saw it from that team. Like I put it out there on X last week. Yeah, when one quarterback steps away and you're bringing in another one, you try to rally around that guy. Show them that you have confidence in them, because they may not have the confidence in themselves because they are the backup guy. But it felt like most of that team felt like Hajj Malik Wiliams should have been the starter from the beginning of the year. And they thought that Matt Sluka got a little bit of preferential treatment. And it kind of proved to be true. They played a pretty solid group of 5 team, and Fresno State won 59-14. Hajj Malik Wiliams, 13 for 16, 182 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, ran the ball 12 times, 119 yards, and a TD. UNLV, we said it last week, the Matthew Sluka thing is tough, but we thought that they could sustain the success they've had so far this year. And through 1 week, I think that they have gone into hyperdrive.
100%. One thing is funny, like I was watching the Hajj Malik Wiliams interview, and that's a grown-ass man, dog. Like, I'm looking at it, this isn't some kid, right? So I think that is a huge factor. He's played a ton of football. I don't care what level. I don't care where. They found that guy, and they believed that he was good enough to get off for a scholarship, even if for only one season. So they trusted him. They believed what they saw on tape enough to where they could invest in this guy, even with the Sluka coming. So I think that the experience is carrying him right now. He's been dying to play on a stage like this. He's been dying to take over a team with this talent, with this opportunity in front of them, being able to play on a national stage. And I think he's relishing in that moment. And I have no doubts. I think Brendan Marion is one of the best offensive coordinators in the country. I think Barry Odom, we had him on the show. Shout out to Barry Odom. He is a guy that is a leader, man. Just period, point blank period. We don't have to go into depth. He's a leader about it. So when you have a guy like that leading the ship, and then a guy like that that's running the show in terms of the offense, it makes it easy for a guy like Hajj to step in, especially with that team support behind him, and contribute right away. So I'm excited for him. I'm excited for that team. I'm really excited to watch him. I hope both them and Boise State went out before their meeting, because we're not far away from that. That Boise State UNLV meeting is going to be incredible.
Yeah. Now, I did ask an anonymous – I'm going to keep this guy anonymous staffer at UNLV about the Matt Sluka thing. And I asked about it after the game once I saw Hajj Malik Wiliams play. And I was like, how long were these conversations with Matt Sluka? And basically what I took away from it, there was two real conversations, one in August where it was like, all right, let's get into the season. Then we can start talking about the NIL money, see if we get more money involved. We could probably pay you out at that point. But apparently the most recent conversation that led Matt Sluka to redshirt and ultimately get in the transfer portal, apparently it lasted 5 minutes or less. It was like, okay, go ahead. Like, hit the road if you want to. I don't really care that much. And you see why on the back end, because they had a lot of confidence in the guy that they brought in, which leads me to the Group of 5 game of the week. And I know one of the teams is a Power 5 or Power 4 school in Syracuse, but Syracuse is going to be on the road at number 25 UNLV. UNLV 6.5-point favorites. And I gotta be honest, I'm gonna make a pick here in a second. I'm gonna make my drop your nuts pick of the year in just a moment. But I like UNLV in this game. I really do. I think that UNLV with Hajj Malik Wiliams at quarterback, sort of giving them the multifaceted dual threat type of style. The defense plays at a high level. I like what Kyle McCord's done so far this year at Syracuse, but that loss to Stanford kind of got me off their bandwagon to a certain extent. This should be a fun one, though, and this can be a massive one for UNLV to continue to build. You'd have 3 Power 4 wins at that point if they beat Syracuse. That'd be unbelievable for them.
Yeah, it's going to be an incredible game. And, I like both of these coaches, too, so I'm really rooting for both of these coaches. I like Fran Brown. I love Barry Odom as well. It's two staffs that I really believe in. I believe they put together top to bottom a lot of football guys. I mean, that's a term that we use a lot. But there's not a lot of BS about these people. They love football. They're doing it the right way, and they're turning it over 2 programs that historically haven't been great. So it's cool to see them in a position like this where they're going to have a spotlight game where both of them are sitting there with really good records and playoff hopes. They both legit have playoff hopes. I know that the Stanford loss looks bad, but Syracuse is a team that if they play to the peak of their ability and really max out this ball club, they could be there at the end in the ACC conversation. So it's going to be really cool to see this game play out. And I think Kyle McCord, man, listen, UNLV's defense is going to have their hands full. But I know that Syracuse's defense is going to have their hands full as well. I think this is going to be a high-scoring football game. I think we're going to get a lot of points. I think McCord is playing well, and he's going to be able to connect on some really explosive plays. And I think Hajj is going to get out there, and he's been dying to play on a stage like this. Like I said just a minute ago, this is his moment, man. This is his time, and I think he understands the moment. Like I said, he's an older guy. This is a guy that's played 4 or 5 years of college football. He knows that this is his last chance to ball out. He knows that this is his moment to seize and really go forward. I think you're going to see him play like it, and I'm really excited. I don't know if I can pick one. I don't have a good feeling either way. If I'm just going off the cuff, I think Syracuse is good enough to pull it out, but I wouldn't bet on either one of these teams right now. That's how close it is to me, and I'm excited to watch.
Well, hell, this leads us into lock, shock, and bonus. I'm going to go with my lock, the drop your nuts pick of the year for me. I've been very, very impressed with UNLV. I've been trying to sort of sing their praises all year. This is where I need to drop my nuts. Take them -6.5 versus Syracuse on their home field. I think that they handle business. I like them offense, defense, special teams. I think they're very well coached. I think they have a better quarterback in there right now, so the offense will be more on pace. I'm going to drop my nuts right here and take UNLV -6.5.
My lock of the week is pretty simple, straightforward here. I'm taking Georgia -24. I think they're going to be that pissed off. I think they're going to be that damn to prove a point, that they're going to be that excited to get back on the field and take their frustrations out on somebody. And if you follow Kirby Smart after losses, the next team that they play normally gets the dog shit beat out of them. So I'm going to go with them, especially with the team like Auburn that, listen, they have a talented defense. They have some players, right? But if they have 2 or 3 turnovers like they've been having, they have their customary turnover game. Against Georgia, that score is going to get ugly fast, and I think Georgia can cover that 24 points. I think it'll be that regardless if they do have a lot of turnovers. And I think Georgia's just that much better. And there's no disrespect to Auburn. Like I said, respect their defense. But Georgia's going to have a point to prove, and this is where those style points, the tiebreakers come into play. If they can run it up, they're going to run it up because they might need it later in the season. So Georgia -24, give me that against Auburn.
All right, my shock, I'm going to go with South Carolina +9.5 versus Ole Miss. My problem here is Ole Miss just played a front seven that is good, but I don't think they're as good as South Carolina's front seven. I think South Carolina has a better pass rushing front seven. I think they can stop the run the exact same way. And I think it's going to be a hard day at the office on the road in South Carolina for Ole Miss's offense yet again. So I'm going to take South Carolina +9.5. I'm not going to pick them to win outright because I still think Ole Miss is going to be very motivated to win that game, however, by any means possible. But I think they keep it within a touchdown. South Carolina does.
Mine is similar. It's in the same ilk. I'm going to take Arkansas +13 against Tennessee. I don't think they're probably good enough to win just yet. I don't feel bold enough to say that. But I think Arkansas, if you watch them play this year, man, Taylor Green's going to keep them in most of their ball games. He's going to be a jack of all trades. He's going to be a little bit of a renegade. You might get a bad interception here and there, but he's going to make some plays that just have your jaw on the floor as well. I think he's good enough, especially on their home field. They're going to be playing with a little bit of swag, a little bit of juice. They've been in every game they played this season. They've been battle tested already. Tennessee is dynamic, and they're going to be able to produce explosives. We know that. But I think Arkansas is just one of the toughest places to go play that people don't really give them enough credit for. I like them with 13 points. I'm not saying they're going to upset them, but I do see a 2-touchdown. I don't see a 2-touchdown gap between them at this point.
All right. Now, my bonus, I'm going to have to do this. This is the perfect setup for a Big Ten brawl right here. Just a sicko game. Just a disgusting football game. Now, both these teams are better than they have been in the past. Rutgers is sitting at 4-0. Nebraska is sitting at 4-1. It's going to be on the road against Nebraska. The fall weather is sort of shifting right now. You're starting to smell it in the air. You want to go hit somebody in the mouth. I think that I'm going to go with the under 44.5 in this game. This feels like the perfect setup for a knock 'em down, drag 'em out 10-7 Big Ten game. May the victor, whoever the victor is, just hope you don't have too many damn injuries on the back end. That's what I'm feeling for this. I think Dylan Raiola could get confused by Rutgers defense. They're going to be getting after that Nebraska offensive line. Both teams are going to have to establish the run if they want to have success offensively, but neither of these teams have really shown that they're very penetrable from a run defense standpoint. They're both pretty solid there. So I'm going to take the under 44.5. I think this is a gross Big Ten game that'll be at 3 p.m. on Saturday.
I'm staying in the Big Ten here, but I'm going to go with the national championship rematch. Michigan heads to Washington. And I think the 41.5 point over, I'm going to take that. I think that there's going to be more points in this game than people realize. I think Michigan's going to be able to run the ball effectively. They're going to put up some points on the ground. Their defense has been helping them out, put points on the board, special teams as well. And I think that Washington's offense is coming along a little bit more here. I think they're going to be good enough to score on Michigan's defense. I think that whatever Jed Fish has in the tank here, that we're going to see all of it. We're going to see trick plays. We're going to see the best vertical deep shots they have. We're going to see them on their home field let their hair down because this is a game, for all intents and purposes, that's a must-win for them. I think they have to come out and try their best to win this ball game because the rest of their schedule is not just the most grueling, but they need a win like this for their program to show people that they're still here. You need a win like this for recruiting. You need a win like this for boosters and donors. you need a win like this to put your name back in the national conversation. I think we're going to get their best showing this week. I don't know if they're going to win it, but I think the 41.5 point total, I think we're going to see over that score for sure this game.
All right, Kai, where do the people find you?
Find me on X, Twitter, whatever you still call it, at Kyron Samuels, and you'll have everything else. I got a Lincoln Riley column I'm putting up in the morning, talking about their history and how they can kind of avoid some of the pitfalls USC that is. So that'll be published in the morning, and I have some more stuff coming as well. So find me on Twitter at Kyron Samuels, and you'll have everything else. And we'll be sharing a lot of this stuff with G5 as well. We got some cool stuff coming for you guys. So appreciate all the support. Like, subscribe, and all the good stuff. And share the podcast with your people. We appreciate it.
Find me on Twitter, G_Kuhn71. That's KUHN71. You can find me every weekday, 92.9 ESPN. I have another podcast under the umbrella of Bluff City Media and Believe called the On the Bluff Podcast every single Tuesday at noon. Go check it out. And by the way, we do have an account on X now for the podcast. Follow us at G5 Classified FB. G5 Classified FB. But beyond that, make sure you like, subscribe, go check out all the great podcasts we have at Bluff City Media and Believe, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode of G5 Classified. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating and a review wherever you download your podcasts. To watch this episode, head over to the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. We'll see you back here next week.